There's a stark difference between pure solitude and loneliness. I've experienced both throughout my 31 years on this rock. Loneliness is a temporary pain that comes and goes depending on your situation and varies in length. But true solitude, it's a voluntary isolation that's quite underutilized. And in this installment of Mega Man and Chill series, where I yap about whatever random topic with Mega Man in the back, I'd like to share with you my personal beliefs on engaging in solitude with intention, a powerful tool that we hardly ever pull out of the box, and how this simple state, depending on the type of person you are, can be the catalyst to becoming the strongest version of yourself. I'll be sharing some background information about my own life experiences with both loneliness and solitude with intention, because my experiences help mold my perspective and what I ultimately want you to take away from this video once you've got the full picture. What I want you to do throughout this video is to recall your own past experiences if you relate to anything I say, as perhaps this could help reframe your past, learn from it, and even help you use your solitude to your advantage, just like I have. So let's begin. This is a difficult thing for me to admit, but I won't lie to you. I'm an awful team player. Growing up, I was never good with activities that required a group or team effort, from academics, sports, projects, games, you name it. In rare instances of me having synergy with anyone, it was more inherent chemistry with that person that was either instinctual or it was just someone I've known for a long time and knew how to work with them. But in most cases in my life, solitude was always my superpower when I had to work alone. It's likely due to the personal space I'm granted, the freedom to follow my own wavelength, and race my way to the goalpost at my own pace. Because when you're alone with a task or problem in front of you, there's only one obstacle. Yourself, no one else. You're in the race against yourself to do better than the you years ago or months ago or even yesterday. When I find myself stuck somewhere in life, for example, it's because the me at the time wasn't strong enough, whether it be physically or mentally, to overcome the obstacle in front of him. What did I do? I worked to strengthen myself in solitude, so when the time came to face what put me down again, I'd be ready to take it on. And that always came with its bundle of challenges. Before I continue, I'm not trying to insinuate that being alone all day every day is the ultimate recipe for happiness and success or whatever. In fact, an unhealthy balance of solitude and social interaction is proven to be detrimental to your mental health, but I'll touch up on that at the end of the video. Just saying this now before I get too deep into the topic, because I know folks like to jump the gun and comment before watching a whole video these days. Anyway, when an obstacle, problem, task, or whatever was standing in my way and it seemed impossible to find a breakthrough, it sent me through a spiral of emotions and self-doubt. Motivation would decline and the helplessness would seep through the fissures of the slowly crumbling hope that I'd come out on top. But amidst the storm of doubt, being left alone with my thoughts remained a constant calming state. A place to be in where my thoughts could run rampant without hurting or inconveniencing the people around me, and placed me in a great position to undergo a lot of self-reflection. This process is more or less the primary approach to inching closer to my life's goals. But why? While solitude is generally not a very glamorized state to be in, especially in Western societies, it can come off as far-fetched to believe it can sometimes bring out the best in someone. Well, here's the thing. Most people who go through life like this usually never have much of a choice in the beginning. The thought of being alone, even if you're not lonely or physically by yourself, can be terrifying. It's why we're often referred to as social creatures. We crave and require connections with other people, and helping each other makes going through this living hell at least somewhat less difficult. But what does one do when their particular environment forces isolation upon them, especially as a necessity for either physical or mental safety? In my last Mega Man and Chill, I talked about my experiences of growing up as a black nerd, and in many of those points in my childhood, both solitude and loneliness were inevitable states to be in. Being the black sheep, no pun intended, among my peers naturally led to being an outcast, as I looked like the kids around me, but I was also different from most of them on the inside. That led to tons of bullying and even worse situations to be put in for simply being different, and that's not to mention high schools. I went to a mixed school during my last 3 years, and it's where I discovered both the beauty of diversity and the nastiness of racism in tandem, but that's a topic I shy away from. Point is, much of my childhood was spent in isolation, both for my own safety and the challenges I faced as a presumed kid with Asperger's syndrome. Though nowadays, Asperger's is no longer a term used on the spectrum and now defaults to high-functioning autism. While having caring parents helped soften to blow, home was just as quiet and lonely as a child. Being the youngest in the house wasn't helping. My brothers loathed the idea of spending time with me and only caved when I annoyed them enough. My only sister and I had a typical healthy sibling relationship, but she was more extroverted and outgoing. By the time she was old enough, she was out more with friends and such, so many of my days were spent alone. Even when it came to outdoor activities, I often shot basketball in the backyard alone, with rare opportunities to play with the bros. Now that I look back on it, I now understand why I was so happy to visit my grandmother every Saturday back in those days. Seeing her was great, yeah, but also because it meant I could play with my cousin whenever he was there. He was pretty much my best friend growing up, though it always hinged on a coin flip whether he'd be there every Saturday or not. He had a much rougher living situation than I did, so in many ways, my childhood was extremely blessed compared to his. Without either of us knowing about it at the time, that may be why we truly got along so well. I was more introverted, and he was definitely extroverted like my sister, but it was difficult to clam up around him because he had some infectious high energy, and I didn't mind it because I felt easy around him, and it helped that we both were nerds. Nowadays we're out of contact, though it's mainly because he's a hardworking, much busier family man now. I'm proud of him, honestly. Though my older brother told him some lies about me when we had that big falling out a couple years ago, so it's safe to say that because of my brother's bullshit, I've lost any chance at rekindling that connection with my cousin. Side note, I made a Mega Man Enraged, the first and last of its kind, about the whole brother situation. It's a video I very much regret making now. Not because anything changed about my feelings, but because it was a bit too personal to share like that. Granted, I'm saying a lot of personal shit in this video, but what I'm saying here supports the overall topic of solitude and builds up to the point I'm trying to make at the end. That video was just... there was no takeaway message in it. I was just pissed off and finally reached a boiling point. It was years of suppressed anger that finally exploded, and venting it publicly didn't really help me feel any better or served any other purpose. But I keep it up as a reminder to never make something like that again. A self-inflicted punishment, you could say. But keeping it up helps me own up to that mistake. Anyway, enough of that. So, when loneliness is forced upon someone, it's hard, and in some cases even impossible, for the brain to recover from the pain that solitude created. It has lasting effects that carry over to adulthood. It's something we often fail to recognize because a lot of us don't like to look back on the past too much. Certain behaviors and even avoidant tendencies we may have stem from our earliest experiences, for their coping mechanisms we've created to survive in the world. We remember the pain associated with those memories, so we do everything to prevent feeling that again. How we interact with others is due to how our experiences with people unfolded as children, and that even includes events from the earliest adulthood. But there's always a payoff. Mentally growing up mostly by yourself means that you've had plenty of opportunities to do much introspection. Being in your own company for so long can build mental resilience. It's more like a realization once you've finally hung in there long enough. Against all the odds, despite being alone, you're still here, still breathing, still trucking along, paving your own road to enlightenment. Even when that path is foggy as hell some days and your light can't fully clear it, you're still walking. There's strength in that. You have plenty of solitude to get to know who you really are and what you're capable of and what your limits are, and most importantly, how much it takes to reach your breaking point. Knowing these things are a crucial first step. Of course, the unpleasantries of the state can distract you from these realizations, so many of us don't catch on to them until much later, once the pain numbs, or never realize it at all because we're too busy trying to fill the void with people who may or may not be a perfect fit for us. But despite loneliness forcing solitude upon you, it's there where you make the best of the hand you've been dealt and realize just what kind of advantage you've truly had all along. Yes, you may not have had someone to confide in, but the fact that you're still here, trying so hard to make your way in life, is a testament to your ability of self-preservation and the tenacity that complements it. With more clarity, one can begin to engage with the solitude more healthily and with intent, because the first battle has been won. The loner finally realizes it's time to love and appreciate who they are. The person they needed the most was always with them, themselves. So that's when the confidence starts rolling in. The mind's more clear, ready to focus on the things that matter to you, that you know that you're capable of doing, and more importantly, appreciating what you already have. The solitude provides a space you need to explore freely and even discover passions you may not have known you ever had. You'll naturally begin to take therapeutic steps to improve your mental strength at your own pace, whether that be meditating to keep your mind sharp and calm, journaling to unload any distracting or distressing thoughts without any prying eyes, anything really. In my case, it does sting from time to time to remember my preference for solitude stemmed from the memories of a younger self, holed up in isolation out of fear and rejection. And in my 20s, licking those wounds all alone in a dark room as I recovered from every failure, tragedy, lost friendships, relationships, etc. But all those events, despite how bad they were, provided the space I needed to look within and realize that all of that temporary shit distracted me from both my purpose and the things that truly mattered to me. A lot of those situations I went through can even call your character into question, especially when going through a toxic relationship or friendship. The drama it causes and the way things deteriorated demoralizes you, causing you to feel like you're trash for the way things concluded. Or when people will outright disrespect what you stand for, disagree with how you walk in life, or can't fathom why you rebel against the norm. But within Solitude, you gain a more open-minded approach to your life. You begin to realize that while you're not perfect, there's no such thing as a right way to walk on Earth, and it's all up to you to decide how you'll move, just like how it's the prerogative of your peers to live life their way as well. It gets even worse when you finally find your stride and then envious eyes and leeches lock onto you. You're putting in the work and getting things done your way, not getting in anyone else's way and just keeping to yourself. Those people feel inadequate about themselves when they see you, so they'll stick close to you either for nefarious reasons unknown to you or latch onto you because you've got something they want. And when they don't get what they want from you or your advances towards your goals make them look bad, somehow you're the problem. Every little aspect of you and your journey is meticulously scrutinized. It's why in recent days I've decided to celebrate my own achievements in silence and privacy. You never know what the other person's going through, and you having a victory will cause them some level of distress about their own progress. Friends are supposed to celebrate with each other over their victories and push each other to keep rising, but that's a dying breed of friendship now. Not having anyone to celebrate with who aren't slaves to their envy is a sad realization that even amongst friends, you can still feel alone and isolated. So they can criticize all they want behind your back, but they'll never be your dictators because you're strong enough to not allow them to mold you into who they think you should be and how to live. Strong enough to ignore and simply pray for them when their jealousy finally manifests itself. All that time in solitude told you plenty about yourself that they'll never know. They didn't see all the behind the scenes work you put in while in the dark, all the challenges that potentially barred your path, the obstacles you had to face alone, the war you waged with yourself internally, the sleepless nights, panic attacks, personal failures, tears rolling down your cheeks, etc. Dealing with the monster that was created from your struggles, refusing to allow the worst parts of yourself to seize control of your core and morph you into someone you're not. For you see, this is where solitude can be both an asset and a dangerous domain to tread. If the mind isn't strong enough, that person can regress instead of progressing. Having the space to sort out your feelings and understand yourself is nice, but if not done healthily and not approaching your thoughts with humility and intent to grow, it becomes all too easy to fall prey to temptations and self-destructive thoughts. And obviously, if it gets to that point, I would definitely recommend that you seek help from either a trusted friend, family member, or professional help, because there's only so much you can do alone. But if you've risen above that conflict and are in a better place, no one will ever see what you went through to get there. And let me tell you, once you get there, everything snowballs with persistence and consistency. All it takes from there is patience and more work on yourself to push further. You'll always be a work in progress, and that's okay, because no matter who you are and where you are in life, we're all works in progress. I don't care if you're a guy named Joe or Stephen King listening to this, you'll always have more work to do on yourself. When I approached solitude with the intent of knowing myself better and strengthening myself both physically and mentally, it was like a wealth of opportunities presented themselves. Since I was already used to going solo, I simply worked on the stuff I liked to do and was hungry for more knowledge. Sure, I was by myself, but seeking mentorship from available resources or even people with more experience was easier because I was more determined than ever to change my situation. Then I took what I learned back with me to the lab alone. That's not to say there weren't any bumps in the road. Those will always be there. And I certainly haven't made it yet, but some of my best work is done alone. Some of my best comebacks are due to sitting in silence and reflecting on what I could do differently to move forward. I especially used to beat myself up when I didn't get enough done on personal projects or progress at a rate that's unsatisfactory, but as I continued to grow, I realized that even in my most unproductive moments, I was still working. Perhaps not on the project directly, but my mind always stayed glued to it. It's why I love to just kick back and casually indulge myself in a good hobby all by myself when I feel stuck. Instead of sitting around feeling sorry for myself, despite the depression, my mind's constantly using that downtime to think of of a good comeback. If I'm playing a game I like, for example, it's easy for my mind to drift off and ponder on actionable steps I can take once I break out of that rut. If I'm reading a book, as another example, and something within its story or contents inspire me, it gets me thinking more about my own writing and what I should implement to progress in my own work. And when it's finally time to return to those projects, I have a wealthy source of options to dig into, and it allows me to tackle that project harder with renewed confidence. To put this into more perspective, it's like my recent developments with this particular YouTube channel. I hit a wall for a while, unsure if I even wanted to do this anymore. When I decided to finally pick back up on a big project, the Mega Man 02 Remastered run, I initially felt like I was incapable of completing it. My recording attempts were sloppy for just the intro stage, making me feel that perhaps it's finally time to retire this thing. If I'm unable to nail this like I used to, maybe this isn't burnout. Maybe it's just time to finally move on to other endeavors full force. But in typical fashion, the stubborn jackass that I am refused to throw in the towel. I gave it some more time to sit, and after some more personal moments of growth and solitude, something just clicked back into place as I said, let's try this one more time. Within a month, up to the current date, I'm sitting in front of my folder, staring in disbelief that I'm already finished with the run. My recording sessions suddenly exploded with productivity throughout that entire month. All for no seeming reason other than I was just motivated, bruh. But it couldn't have been that simple, because I was immediately like, what the fuck did I just do? Just a month ago, I told myself I was washed up and ready to quit. Then the next, I finished something in half the time I expected. I believe the real trigger was a thought that appeared in my head during a meditation session before I resumed to run. And I shit you not, this thought was like me saying this to myself. When was the last time you looked back on everything you've done so far? And that's when it hit me. I never truly took the time to take some pride in the things I did accomplish alone. Everything. Not just this YouTube channel, for it's only a piece of the full pie. I was so caught up in where I wasn't to where I lost sight of where I was at the moment. And more importantly, where I was before I got here. Somewhere much darker. A place I never want to go back to. Ever. Sure, I still haven't finished my book, but I still have a whole first draft and half of a second draft completed. Making it past the first draft is a feat alone, for it's common to never make it to that first goalpost, especially for something fantasy novel length. I remember when I wrote the final word for the first draft, I actually cried. Not out of sadness, but joy. It was a genuine, I did it! Moment that I was proud of. Sure, I've yet to break past my current limit with my physical fitness goals, but that doesn't take away from the progress I've already made. I'm still eating healthier than before, and I'm still looking better than I did a couple years ago. I'll never forget that feeling I had when I looked in the mirror one day and saw my body transformed without realizing it after a whole year of consecutive work. Sure, my projects for my channels aren't completed, but what about the dozens I've already got neatly finished and wrapped up? The joy I felt when I earned my first 1,000 subs can't ever be forgotten, nor any other milestone that came after it. I was so caught up with what I hadn't finished that I forgot how those moments felt when I did hit certain milestones. Taking pride in what you've already done shouldn't be seen as getting complacent, but simply remembering how you felt in those moments. Something to keep you going. The joy and overall power I felt in overcoming the walls I'd torn down is something I want to experience over and over again. I believe that's what pushed me to finish the 02 run, for example. I wanted to feel that power of triumph by my own ability again. I wanted to feel that again for all of my other projects. The more drafts I complete for my book, I want to keep experiencing those joys all the way up into the final draft, where those tears of joy can go rolling down those cheeks again as I get to finally share it with the world. And achieving all that at my pace with my own abilities will be incredibly satisfying, because then I'll just be ready to move on to bigger and badder things in the future, and I can only grow stronger from there. That's the ultimate goal. Learning more about yourself and strengthening your core self in solitude is paramount to being a productive member of society. When you've mastered your inner life, you'll be ready to share it with the surrounding people who you deserve to be around. Be the best version of yourself so you can be the light in other people's lives. Because for as great as solitude with intent can be, going 100% solo will cause you to forget how to lean on others when things get way too heavy for one person to bear. Like it did for me. Excluding my immediate family, I was used to being alone with few to none to trust. So when options did finally present themselves to find better companions, I didn't quite know how to either connect with them or maintain what came my way. I can blame my traumatic experiences with awful people back in the day, but the past is the past. Those people are gone. Letting past pains dictate new bonds is not the way to go. The time alone is healing time as well, so don't do what I did and stay in the dark just because of some irrational fear of I'll just go through the same old drama all over again. Get back out there once you're all healed up and ready. But for working on yourself and engrossing yourself with things that matter, solitude is your friend. If you're like me and didn't have too many people to rely on in the past, take pride because you've done so much on your own and you're still alive. You didn't have another person's hand on your shoulder anyway, so just keep on going. The right people will come when the time's right, especially when you're mentally ready for them. Just keep fighting. It's rough out there in our world, and the only person barring you from happiness is yourself. Thanks for sticking by and listening. Really, this video was a mix of just me putting thoughts out there like it was my own journal entry, but I do know that a lot of people struggle with loneliness and not feeling like they've got enough support. Hopefully my experiences shared here, as well as my opinions, will give those people just a little nudge they need to start moving again. Really, when I looked back at my channel the other day and reflected on all I've done, it really did dawn on me. I've been doing this damn thing for almost 15 years. On and off, sure, but October 4th will mark this channel's 15th anniversary. What the hell, dude? It makes me wonder how far I'd have gone if I focused more on a channel in its earliest years. But there's no point in dwelling on what ifs. I suppose that makes it all the more poetic that 02 Remastered Run will be all edited and released soon. I'll officially be on my vacation from my evening job next week, so I'm gonna be working hard to finish everything up before then. That way I can just kick back in solitude and not worry about a damn thing for 9 days straight. But yeah, I'll see you guys real soon. Stay up to date with my community posts, and always remember to stay chill.